Hey, listeners! Thanks for tuning in for another nutrition lecture from the Best Summer Ever series. Today we are on lecture number 3, which we're going to talk about alcohol and fat loss. So, alcohol and fat loss are both kind of tricky subjects. There seem to be a lot of beliefs, a lot of chat, a lot of things that we hear about them, but what's actually true? This is actually the whole point of all of these nutrition lectures, is to attempt to break down myth and fact so that indeed when you're making your own choices or having your own conversations, that you can come from a more knowledgeable place. First, let's talk about alcohol. A little bit of a controversial subject, especially considering that we hear something new or different about alcohol and its consumption honestly every day. I feel like I see something new on the news or in the Volkskrant or on the web or on the internet. Hey, 1 glass of red wine proves to help you prevent cancer, or 2 glasses of red wine is detrimental to women's health, or drinking vodka and soda makes no calories in the body. A lot of these things we hear, we read, and it's difficult to determine what's true because it's changing a lot. Now, what's really important to state is that just like there's no perfect diet or one way for eating, there is not one answer for alcohol consumption that suits everybody. Certainly, you can lead a healthy lifestyle, you can be perfectly fit, and still have alcohol in your life. There are also people who that is not the case for. So I will definitely not start the video or even end the video with a blanket statement such as, yes, you should drink, or no, you should drink. This is entirely a personal decision. I just want to give you as much information on the background of it as I possibly can. As with most of my teachings, some of my most valuable information is coming from experiential knowledge or from things that I have done myself. So I have, in periods of my life, either completely abstained or drastically reduced my alcohol intake. And there are other periods of my life where I paid no attention to how much alcohol I was drinking. I just drank when I felt like it. I drank for fun. I drank with friends. So I have visited sort of both ends of the spectrum. Now, I can tell you that when I did eliminate alcohol from my life for about 2.5 years, completely abstained from the substance, absolutely not one drop, it was a very interesting time. I would say it was a great social experiment. I would say I went through a lot of awkward phases, especially at social events where I wasn't quite sure how to interact. I even found myself withdrawing socially from certain things where I felt like I didn't want to have to explain why I wasn't drinking. On the flip side, I never had a hangover. I felt really good. I woke up every day very clear-headed, very ambitious with my goals, set a lot of targets for myself, met a lot of those goals. It was a great time in my life, a really focused, clean time. Definitely a little bit of less social time, but it was a lot of self-growth as well, and that's something to be valued. Now, there are times in the last 1 or 2 years where I started to incorporate alcohol back into my diet or back into my lifestyle. And it became very interesting to see the choices that I made around alcohol after not having consumed it for a while. Similar to the way that I choose my food, I try to choose alcohol that's very high in quality. So I will indulge in natural wines and organic wines, craft beers, not so much liquor, but there are great local crafted liquors as well. Similar to the principles I keep for my food, I keep for my alcohol as well. So not just eating or drinking it because it's there. If it's in a package, usually I'm not such a big fan. I usually like to meet the person who made it or who grew it. So these are some things that you can also keep in common or keep in mind when trying to decide which type of alcohol you want to drink if you're going to start to get more specific about it. So I think that's enough about the alcohol. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background information on my own experience, and just to clarify that there is not one perfect answer. There is not one solution. The best thing you can do for yourself around alcohol is to get very honest about when, where, why, and how much you're drinking. Especially why you're drinking, I think, is a really important clue or a really important piece of the information. If it's just to fit in or if it's just to make yourself comfortable, maybe that's something to be evaluated. If you're drinking because you enjoy it and it's a celebration, that's maybe something also to be evaluated, but to really try not to judge yourself, but to be very honest about your relationship with alcohol. And again, just when, where, why, and how much. Now let's move on to the next topic of the lecture, which would be fat loss. First, I want to make a differentiation between weight loss and fat loss. So as women, especially, maybe men sometimes as well, but I work mostly with women. As a woman myself, I speak from the female perspective. We have a very tricky relationship with the scale. I hear this from a lot of my clients, especially when they start strength training. They'll say things like, the scale went up 3 kilos, or I've never seen this number so high on a scale. And my response is always the same. First, where are you in your cycle, as in your menstrual cycle, and also how are your clothes fitting? Sometimes in the menstrual cycle, it has nothing to do with the number on the scale, but most of the time the answer to the second question is that their clothes are fitting really well, their energy is happy, their energy is high, they feel happy. So that number on the scale, it carries a lot of emotion, but it doesn't necessarily tell us our health or our happiness, how we feel, how our clothes are fitting. So when I'm working with a client and they tell me that their goal is to lose weight or to lose body fat, I recommend sort of adjusting the relationship with the scale. Weight loss is very easy to achieve, actually. If you didn't drink water for an entire day and fasted overnight, you would see a drastic drop in the scale. You would see a significant change in the number. The same goes the other way around. If you weigh yourself in the morning before you've eaten anything and after you've emptied your bowels, and you weigh yourself at the end of the day, you would see a difference, maybe even as high as 4 kilos on a scale. When you're getting your period, your body starts to hang on to liquid a bit more. You notice you feel a bit bloated, you feel a bit inflamed, and the scale will go up. The scale will show this inflammation. But this has absolutely nothing to do with the percentage of fat on your body. So weight loss, very easy to achieve. Even weight gain, very easy to achieve. But what most people are looking for when they're trying to change their aesthetics or when they're trying to get into better shape, as a lot of people say, is they're looking to lose body fat. To decrease body fat, we have to get pretty specific about the equation and the balance of your macronutrients. Now, we've discussed macronutrients a bit together. Last week, we went into depth about carbohydrates. The first week, we talked about macronutrients in general, just the fact that they are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Or someone's macronutrient balance in order to achieve a state of fat loss. It's not a one solution or one equation fits all, but it tends to be pretty similar in the amounts and the values that it goes up and that it goes down. For example, it's very likely that if somebody comes to me with a goal to lose body fat, I will check out their food journals, I will understand what's their current intake of macronutrients, and I will very likely adjust their protein intake to be significantly higher. Especially for women, we are chronic protein undereaters. I just see it a lot. I've done it myself. It's normal. But increasing the protein is definitely one part of the equation when it comes to losing body fat. As far as the balance between fat and carbohydrates, that varies. There are some people, some body types that do very well with carbohydrates. And for those body types, I would not be concerned with reducing the carbohydrates. There are some other body types that do very well with a lot of fat and with not a lot of carbohydrates. So again, the equation is not the same for everybody, but certainly if you're dedicated to losing fat on your body, you will need to subscribe to a certain macronutrient balance with someone like yourself, someone like myself, helping you figure out what exactly that balance needs to be. Now to the topic at hand, how does alcohol affect fat loss? So if we think about what I just previously said about macronutrients and needing to balance them. Certainly, alcohol contains what we call empty calories, which are calories that have absolutely no nutritional value. So putting calories in your body without getting any of the benefit of vitamins or minerals or fiber or water. So besides being high in empty calories, alcohol tends to also be high in carbohydrates. Now, if you're trying to watch your carbohydrate intake, this might prove to be an issue. The tricky thing is you can definitely drink alcohol and stay within your carbohydrate limits. You have to consume carbohydrates anyway, so you may decide, okay, I'm gonna not have bread for lunch, but I'm gonna have 2 glasses of wine later. Sometimes you hear that or you see that in people's patterns. So it is possible to stay within your macronutrient balance and drink alcohol. So this is why it gets tricky. How does alcohol actually affect fat loss on the body? If it's not the carbohydrates and it's not the calories, then what is it? The thing about alcohol is that your body views it as a foreign substance. When you ingest alcohol and it goes into your bloodstream, the body immediately sees this isn't giving us any fiber, water, nutrients, vitamins. This must not be a food. This is not water. This is not tea or coffee. This is something else. This has a strange profile. And so what the body does is it works immediately to get rid of it. It starts sending all of your resources to metabolize the alcohol as quickly as possible. Now, if you're consuming your regular diet, or usually when you're drinking alcohol, you're maybe consuming a bit extra or indulging a bit, this is where the problem comes in. If your body has redirected all your sources to eliminating the alcohol first, the carbohydrates and the fats and the proteins are kind of on the sidelines waiting to be processed. And after a certain amount of time, carbohydrates, if they're not being processed, if the body is not metabolizing them, they will be stored as body fat. The body is very smart. It will just say, hey, we don't have enough energy to keep going right now. Let's just move those carbohydrates to body fat and let's continue focusing on the alcohol. Now, obviously, that's a very simple version of how alcohol is metabolized in the body, but it's accurate. I don't think we need to go into the scientific background about the liver and detoxification and hormones and everything that goes into the metabolizing of alcohol. But if we can understand that the body sees the alcohol as a first and foremost thing to metabolize, while the rest of your food waits on the sideline, that makes a bit of sense as to why maybe excess alcohol consumption, even when you're consuming low calories, can contribute to an increase in body fat. If we consider also the mental effects of drinking alcohol and being on a path towards a healthier life, sometimes they don't necessarily fit together. When we are drinking alcohol, it's a time of usually indulgence. Our inhibitions are lowered a bit. We might tend to eat something that we wouldn't usually eat if we were in our perfectly clear state of mind. This is not to say this is the same for everybody, but this is just one way that alcohol could affect your sort of attempt to live a healthy lifestyle or your attempt to balance your macronutrients in order to lose a bit of body fat. Now, as summer is coming up and the time for celebrations is here, a lot more social events, certainly a lot of situations where alcohol is involved, I'd like to give you a few of my own personal tips, which I use to monitor my alcohol consumption and to make it a bit more special rather than, okay, it's another night and I'm gonna have another drink. I try to make it a bit more special. Something that I do when I go to a party or I'm invited to a party is I bring my favorite non-alcoholic beverage. Sometimes that's kombucha. You can find that at your local health store. It's just a fermented sparkling tea. It's really nice for your gut health. There's a lot of probiotics in there, like the probiotics that you might find in yogurt or something like that. So usually my first drink of the evening, I try to make it something non-alcoholic. If you're not familiar with kombucha, I also usually bring sparkling water. I maybe even bring sparkling water with a bit of fruit syrup extract. One of my German friends gave me homemade elderflower syrup, and I find that always to be such a nice little treat. A nice sparkling water, elderflower syrup, maybe a sprig of mint. And usually the other people at the party are a bit intrigued, sort of, what are you making? And, oh, can I have one? And it turns out that I'm usually not the only one that's trying to monitor my alcohol intake. So when I'm at a party or I'm going to a party, I bring my favorite non-alcoholic beverage and I indulge in that first. I make that my first drink of the evening. After this first drink, I'm usually a bit more hydrated. I've been mingling a bit with the drink in my hands, and I'm able to put off having that first glass of wine or having that cocktail a little bit longer. So the first sort of 5 minutes of the party is always when someone's like, can I get you something to drink? And if you have something, that helps you to avoid that question for the first hour or so. This is a tactic I call delayed gratification. I don't tell myself, you're not going to drink tonight, you can't have a drink. I always tell myself, if you want to have a drink, have one, but have your mocktail or your alcohol-free drink first. And usually after that first drink, again, I'm hydrated, I've acclimated to the party, I found someone to talk to, or I've made some acquaintances, and my urge to reach for the drink is a bit less. Something else I like to do during these times of celebration and summertime barbecues to monitor my alcohol intake is I try to impose a sort of 2 or 3 day a week limit for myself. Like, hey, you have these days, you have a lot to get done. Maybe it's not a good idea on a Wednesday night to go out to a food festival and have 3 or 4 drinks. Why don't you save that for Friday or for Saturday? And usually by the time Friday or Saturday comes, I feel pretty proud of myself for having completed a nice clean week, feeling really good going into the weekend, and my desire to kind of have that alcohol or go out and party is already a little bit less, just from my feeling of having taken care of myself so well during the week. Now, my last piece of advice on managing your alcohol intake has to do with managing your stress intake. Alcohol is a really great method of decompression. Having that drink, sitting down in your favorite spot, even if it's your backyard, your balcony, alone, or with your partner, and just having that first sip of alcohol usually brings that sort of feeling to your being. That's a feeling that I understand well, and I can appreciate it. What's very interesting is to try to find an alternative activity that gives you that same feeling. No doubt it will take a bit longer than the alcohol. I started to notice during the winter, with the help of my own health coach, that after a long, dark, cold week, Friday at 5 p.m., I was stressed to the max. I was exhausted, I was overworked, and a glass of red wine was the perfect thing. 1 glass turned to 2, maybe 3, and then I started my Saturday not feeling the best. So I experimented with different, what we call them, as decompression methods. Instead of going home on Friday, I would do something special for myself. Once a month, I would get a massage. Once a month, I would find a friend and we would go walking in the evening. Even though it was dark, we would just get bundled up and go outside. Maybe I would get my toenails painted, but I would choose a decompression method on Friday afternoon that gave me that feeling of without having to reach for the alcohol. So that's all I really have to say about alcohol and about fat loss. It's a bit of general information. If you feel like you have more questions personally about your alcohol intake, about managing it, I think we should chat about that personally. If you have goals of fat loss versus weight loss, definitely something we can also talk about personally. 3rd week in, I think we've had 2 great trainings so far, 2 great outdoor trainings. I really appreciate the work that you did with your food journals. And there's no assignment this week. I will give you a break from the assignments just to listen to the video and read the notes and come to me with any questions that you might have. So homework-free week, yay, that's always the best. And I look forward to seeing you for training and for next week's lecture.